Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our State of the Program series. Tonight, it's the Iowa Hawkeyes. I'm your host, Sean Vowells. I've got Joe Meade with me. We'll do a little bit of a season recap and then how they are looking heading into next year. So, Joe, Iowa, um, with just what turned out to be one of the toughest schedules in the country this year, they are 9-4, similar to the last team that we did, Illinois, but almost every, in fact, not almost every single game was close. They finished 9-4 overall, 6-3, but Iowa was a few plays away from us having quite a different conversation here.
Yeah, and probably the conversation that would also be part of is Kirk Ferentz being National Coach of the Year. And I'm dead serious about that because that Indiana game, he probably dethroned Cignetti as Coach of the Year per se if he gets Iowa into the playoff. Now, we're not going to get into that hypothetical debate because I'm going to get absolutely destroyed in the comments and in my direct messages. So let's
They were
not.
the
But
closest team that didn't make it from the Big Ten, I would say.
yeah, I uh,
I mean, Michigan was one game away, but it was really one
yeah, it was
really,
three
really tough
blowouts. Yeah,
game. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. No, I think, I know I'm not going to go on a Steve Sarkisian rant here, but the tirade he went on, I bet Kirk Ferentz, if he wasn't such a class act or, just had, kind of the quiet monotone attitude he has, would probably think the same as Steve Sarkisian and say it publicly because this schedule, outside of dodging in Ohio State, was pretty ridiculous. Even if you look at it, objectively, yeah, I know Wisconsin, again, was bad this year, but no one loves going to Camp Randall either. No one's a fan of going out west to the better California team at the time, USC. And clearly that yearly rivalry of Nebraska, which with Dylan Raiola might have been a whole totally different game. So you looked at that schedule for Iowa and you kind of thought, 8 to 9 wins and they got it. But I'd say this, in a way, is somewhat better and worse. Better because you were close in all those games, worse because you were close in all those games. And it really leaves you wondering, you tinker two plays in the timeline and what I don't think Iowa wins the national title, but they're certainly the 12 team. They go 10-2 with that schedule.
And Michigan was 9-4 also, Joe, right?
Mhm.
So, yeah, like it's a completely different view of things from Michigan, right? Michigan was clearly not the better team in their losses, and then they beat the teams that they were supposed to. And you're probably thinking, okay, 9 wins is probably like as good as this team could have done. That is not the case here for Iowa. They start off the year with a win against Albany, but then they go on the road in their rivalry game and lose by a field goal. They had the lead in that game, and at that time, Iowa State was still pretty healthy and still a good team. Now, they lost a few players and lost some games this year, but that was still a really good team that they played. The Indiana game, like you said, they have the ball with 2 minutes left with um, a kick at the lead. At the time, they miss it. Indiana goes down, scores a touchdown. They lose that game. Then they take care of business against Wisconsin, Penn State, and Minnesota. An awfully close call. It against Penn State, in which was Grunkelmeyer's first game, but they get the job done there. They host Oregon in a classic Big Ten ugly weather game. They lose by or on a field goal at the end. Then
Hmm.
they go out west, another rain game. Could have gone either way. They lose that one too. So, every single one of these games, really could have gone either way. And unfortunately for them, they really didn't have a toss up game that went their way. Now, the Michigan State game was close, but I believe that they were winning by a lot for most of that game. And
No, well, in the Michigan State and Penn State game, the only pushback I'll have their shot is, clearly Iowa at the time of both those games was the better team, but
yes,
they really got outclassed at home, and they kind of needed to turn it on at the end, for both of those. So I'm not going to be the adjudicator of is it fair they won those because they lost those. I'm not going to really get into that debate, but regardless, they beat every team on paper they were clearly better than, and I don't think anyone's going to really argue with me aside from maybe Iowa State between SC, Oregon, and Indiana which of those teams on paper are better. But to get so damn close, it shows to me though, Kirk Ferentz still has it.
Yeah, the
Uh,
formula still works.
Formula still works, and I think it's also a testament to Tim Lester too. The biggest stink on Iowa from probably about 2019 to 2023 was that damn offense, and I think Tim Lester's kind of gotten some luster, for lack of a better term, not trying to rhyme with Lester, but I think he's done a really good job. I think he's done it with two different kinds of QBs between, the Cade McNamara types and then, obviously your Mark Gronowski's completely different skill sets with running and throwing the ball. I think it's helped. He's had some great running backs like a Caleb Johnson and a Kamari Moulton who will be back for 2026. So, maybe like a Michigan that went a 9-3, 9-4. Perhaps maybe we're just judging this season way too quickly, and maybe this is a stepping stone to 2026. Who really knows?
Yeah, the offense did create a little bit more explosiveness this year than in the past. They have some games where they were stuck in the mid-teens, but those are games that could have gone either way. Like if in games that they had to push it, they actually like got the job done. They scored a lot of points in all their wins. And then they go on the Rely Quest Bowl. Vanderbilt, a team that had been complaining for weeks that they deserved to be in the college football playoff, and then they put 34 on them. So, like, they did a really solid job this year. We really said it leading into the year a lot. Like, Iowa might be better than last year, but they might have less wins. And I think they got to the same total that they did the year before, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, the formula still works. Great defense, and the thing that they really did better this year was that they completed drives. Like they just weren't doing that in the past in that period that you said, you know, they still take care of the ball. They didn't throw for a ton of yards this year, but they got themselves a quarterback that could, take a lot of hits, could move the ball himself. And at the end of the day, Joe, Iowa fans might be thinking that they were awfully close to the college football playoff, but they were still a really solid team. And even so much respect from the team that they almost beat, Kurt Signetti did put them 11th in his last poll. So it's clear that Iowa got some respect from their opponents this year. And at the end of the day, like it was a pretty solid year for the Hawkeyes.
I completely agree, Sean, and I don't think that they get the credit they deserve this year. But I would say they're upper middle class, and if you're going to compare them to a previous video or a video that's going to go up later, Illinois, I'd say they're the class of the upper class. That's
Yeah.
terribly class of the upper middle class. But seriously, Sean, I really think because of coaching, because of pedigree of Kirk Ferentz, Phil Parker as a tandem. This is a team that was one of the hardest outs in the conference, and I bet you, if Ohio State saw Iowa this year, they probably beat them. But a betting man like me would say, between what happened in the Indiana and Oregon game, that game probably could have been damn close too.
Yeah, I think Iowa probably beats Ohio State
In
if it was
Kinnick,
if it was at Kinnick
yeah,
because they had played nobody and the first sign like that Big Ten championship game for Ohio State was like what an Iowa game would feel like, and they
yeah,
made crucial decisions wrong, and then I think like Michigan, had they played Michigan, I think the home team probably wins that game too, and whoever it is, and ultimately, they didn't play, but yeah, I mean this was a really solid year from Iowa. I think they figured some things out that they can still do the Iowa thing and be a tough team to beat, and they did that this year, 9-4, 6-3 overall. Joe, let's slide it over to 2026 now. Um, the schedule does come out tomorrow. This will go out Friday, so we will know when these Big Ten games are. We do know when the non-conference games are. They're hosting Northern Illinois to start off the year. That is the team that did beat Notre Dame 2 years ago. Then they host the Cyhawk game on September 12th. Um, that rivalry game keeps going back and forth, and then they host Northern Iowa. So, they have themselves a marquee non-conference game like Illinois does, and then two other games that they should win. In terms of their Big Ten opponents, Joe, they do have 4 home games, 5 road games. They have Nebraska, Ohio State, Purdue, and Wisconsin at home Illinois, Michigan, Minnesota, Northwestern, and Washington on the road. With This is probably the hardest that it can get while simultaneously avoiding the top two teams from the year before.
I completely agree. And one thing I will say that should give some comfort to Iowa fans. They already know this. Matt Campbell is no longer at Iowa State, and the good news is, I think Kirk Ferentz did a very good job in that series against Matt Campbell. But if you're worried about Matt Campbell in general, you don't face him in 2026. No Penn State,
Or
no like up
2027. I don't think they
or
have them next year
2027.
either.
Yeah.
Let me just
So
check.
so you avoid playing a tough non-con opponent, and if you want to consider Iowa State, you got them at home, so not much complaining to do there. I think the four games it's going to come down to, Sean. You guessed it, at Illinois, Ohio State, at Michigan, and at Washington. You assume Nebraska will be that Friday in the Heroes game, Friday of rivalry week, the final week of the regular season. But it's going to be interesting to see how the schedule times out. I'm going to do my best just with what we have right now. Uh, Probably they're over under, Sean. Call me crazy. Might be 8.5, maybe 7.5 conservatively.
Yeah,
But
all five road games could be tough. Like Northwestern's been bowl
totally.
eligible the last few years. The same with Minnesota and Illinois, which is there like a secondary rivalry there? I think there might be.
Yeah, there is.
Um, and then Washington, a place that nobody, one team has won the last 2 years. At Michigan, a team that, especially if that game at Michigan is early in the year, Joe, that'll be an incredibly tough place to play. And then like there might not be in like an automatic win on here. Now Nebraska, Purdue, Wisconsin at home, you'd like to think that they would take care of business there, but it's looking like that they're going to have a lot of middle of the pack teams here. No Maryland, no Rutgers, um, no UCLA. Like I think that there's a lot of middle of the pack teams here for Iowa, so I think it's going to be a lot of close games again.
I agree, Sean, and I think the key is Iowa's right now toward the upper middle class. Can they stay there, get a little better, and can they hold off, teams that are on their tail? Illinois is immediately one that comes to mind on this schedule. I think Minnesota and Northwestern still a ways away, but we've seen what PJ Fleck and David Braun in his short tenure has done there. So I wouldn't be necessarily sleeping easy if I'm Kirk Ferentz or anyone on that coaching staff. And then obviously you're going to bring back Kamari Bolton, but we don't know who the QB is going to be. Is it going to be Jeremy Heglinski? Is it going to be Hank Brown, the Auburn transfer? A lot of unknown there. So two different QBs as well. Heglinski's more of a gunslinger. Brown, maybe not so much. So I think we're gonna have to project a record here after spring ball, and really after that Iowa State game to know what style they're gonna run. And we know defensively what they'll be in with Phil Parker. Tim Lester's kind of a chameleon in a good way. He can adjust with his personnel. I think he did that whether he was at Western or clearly here it is 2 years at Iowa so far. So can Iowa further upgrade that offense without Mark Gronowski? I think replacing him is going to be really, really tough. I think most pundits and Iowa fans around the country know that. So uh, that's going to be the biggest question to me all offseason. Can they figure that out? And can they, further elevate? We talked about their 2025 as not disappointment, just a few missed opportunities, which implies disappointment. There's not going to be a shortage of opportunities here to right that ship, Sean.
Yeah, it's truly, can they keep the standard that they've set? It didn't look great for a few years there, Joe, but they still won a lot of football games. And last year it started to look a little bit better. Like they were not horrendous to watch. They created some trick plays. They had some fun. Weechin is gone, but he was one of the most explosive players in the conference. And can they keep their level at, let's say, anywhere between like 15 and they were top 15, top 20 team this year, anywhere in there. Like, can they keep that standard? Can they beat the teams that they're better than, and can they beat the teams around them? And like you said, that there'll be plenty of opportunities for that. Um, ultimately every team that gets a 4 home and 5 road game split, like you're always up against it a little bit. And then when you have the fact that none of like the really bad teams, you're getting zero, or all the 5 road teams that you're playing were all bowl eligible. Like this is a really really tough year for Iowa.
Yeah.
But that is it. That is all we have for you today. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.